Okay, so we're to our last section in Unit 10. Woohoo! You guys are awesome. You're totally doing it. You're totally doing it. This is the quadratic formula. And for me, this is going to be 24 and 25. And I think that the videos for this are good, that are already in WAMAP. So the notes that I'm going to give you, oops, this is page 23. I never wrote that on there. 24 and 25. It's just kind of some background information. I actually kind of think that the quadratic formula is a fun thing in math. I think formulas are fun though anyway. Keep in mind that sometimes teachers are nerds, right? We think weird things are fun. So our goal is to get some background info on the quadratic formula, which I like to shorten to be quad form. I don't know why. Quadratic formula just seems so long to write, and quad form, is what all the hip kids are calling it. I don't know if that's really what they call it. It's just way less to write. Again, teachers are nerds. Okay, and then the second goal that we're going to do is we're just kind of going to walk through it and talk about how it works. So again, take some COVID notes for yourself. I am feeling like I want to eat everything in the house, and I'm not really hungry. Not hungry. Still want to eat. For some reason, it must be stress eating. You're going to have some different notes, but again, we're just taking some notes about where your head is while we're doing this. You want to take some notes about your familiarity with the quadratic formula. Have you heard it before? What do you remember from before? And then, as always, give yourself a confidence score. So number 1 is I'm not confident yet. Number all the way up to 10, which is I got this. So how confident are you with the quadratic formula? So, do you remember back here when we were talking about, oops, there's some notes from before. When we were talking about the stuff at the beginning of Unit 10, and we got to this thing where it said not factorable, right? Yeah, it's not factorable in the way that we were talking about it at this point. So that's what the quadratic formula is. It's a way to find the ugly answers. Because the way that we've been factoring, the answers are pretty, right? The answers are, -6 and +8. They're, 9 and 10. They're nice numbers. Even if they're fractions, like they're still nice numbers. We are about to encounter some factors that are ugly. And the way that we do that is by using this formula. I grabbed a marker to write this formula. So x equals, and I've got kind of two parts of a fraction here. -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. You might have seen this somewhere in WAMAP before if you've worked in WAMAP before. You've probably seen this in the expressions section. They've been trying to train you to plug things into this expression since we started working in this program. And now you know why. It's a part of this big, weird formula. Okay? Now this is something that we might not have seen as well, plus or minus. So you remember back when we were in 10.4, when we set them equal to 0, it would give us two different factors as the answer, right? That's still going to be the case, and this is how we're going to get them. It's going to be, this plus this, and then this minus that. And that's how we're going to get our two different answers. And so what this, this gives us our first solution. Just some little notes here. And that minus sign, it gives us our second solution. So just like with factoring before, we're going to still end up with two solutions. And this whole thing depends on ax squared plus bx plus c, or minus, or plus and minus, but it depends on this. And so these coefficients, the numbers that are in front of those parts of my trinomial, that's going to be where I get the numbers that I plug into my formula. Let's write some steps, okay, and do an example, because I feel like this is one of those things that it's just going to be good, sort of the more examples that you can see. So first I want to identify my A, B, and C. So if I have, let's say I have an example here, 3x squared plus 4x minus 8 equals 0. Oh, I should say that up here too. Equals 0. Okay, so there's nothing that I can factor this. Even if I do the slip and slide method, like, it is not going to work. And the reason for that is that it's ugly. Like, there's nothing pretty about it. I'm going to end up with this decimal numbers as my two solutions. But if we use this, the quadratic formula, it's going to get us there easier. So first I'm going to identify my A, right? So this is in front of the x squared, so that's my A. This 4 is in front of just the x, so that's my B. And this 8, I'm going to bring that negative sign with him. He's going to be the C. This is the constant, right? I know we've talked about this in other classes, kind of those terms, but just want to make sure that we know them now. Okay, so now I've identified it. I'm going to plug in A, B, C to the formula. Okay, so x equals minus b. So I have a 4, so the negative sign stays there. So that even though this is a positive right here, it's going to become negative because it's negative in my formula. Plus or minus the square root of 4 squared minus 4 times a, which is 3, times negative 8, which is c, all over 2 times 3, which is my a. And then I'm going to, my third step, so I plugged them in. So I identified, I plugged them in. Now I'm going to solve. Well, I'm going to simplify, I guess. Simplify using the correct order of operations. Which is PEMDAS. Hopefully that rings. I don't think we talked about that, did we? We haven't talked about PEMDAS this quarter, have we? Nope. But parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, add, subtract. Hopefully that rings a bell from your previous math classes. So basically that x to the fourth, he's going to stay the same. This is plus or minus. What's 4 squared? 4 times 4 is 16. And then here I've got, I don't know about you, but I'm getting a little tired, so I'm gonna use, so I have 4 with he's got a negative sign in front of him, right? Because that comes from my formula. Times 3 times a negative 8. So this is going to be plus 96, and that whole thing is going to be over 6. Okay, so I've simplified it a little bit. Can I simplify it any more? Yeah, what's 16 plus 96? That is 112. So now x is going to equal negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 112 all over 6. So then I'm going to solve the equation. So I'm going to take I'm going to take this guy, right? And now it's going to be negative 4 plus the square root of 112 over 6 equals 0. And it's going to be, equals x. Why did I say 0? This equals 0. Oh my gosh, I'm losing my mind. Negative 4 minus the square root of 112 over 6. So see how this gives me my first solution and this one gives me my second solution? And if you have an iPhone, to get to a square root, you just have to turn it this way. And then it's this button right there with the 2 and then the little square root sign. So I'm going to find the square root of 112, which is that big old yucky thing. And then now I'm going to add negative 4 to it. And then I'm going to divide by 6. So this answer over here is 1.1. I'm going to round that to 1.1. It's really 1.0971675 for blah, 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 right? So I'm going to round it to 1.1. How about over here? So I'm going to start by entering my 112. I'm going to find the square root of that. And then I'm going to make it negative, and I'm going to minus 4 from it. Wait, I got to do that the other way. No, that did it, right? 112 square root, make it negative, minus 4. Yeah, I think. Okay, and then divide by 6. So for this answer, going to be negative 2.4305008, blah, 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 blah. I'm going to round it to negative 2.4. So these are my two answers. So if I were to take this thing, it would be, x minus 2.4 times x plus 1.1, and it would kind of take me back out to this, right? In theory. It's not going to work exactly because the exact answers are these things. So one thing to keep in mind is that sometimes WAMAP is going to want you to enter this big old mess of a thing as your answer. And so the next video is going to show you how to do that because it is wild. Okay? So we'll look at another example when I'm over at the computer and we're walking through it on there.